When you've been around as long as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you're bound to have all kinds of iterations and continuities. Once upon a time, the brand was a license to print money. We had turtle cartoons, turtle movies, turtle video games, turtle books, turtle backpacks, turtle Play-Doh, turtle domination. Trying to rank the on-screen additions is akin to picking your favorite child. You have your reasons, and some of your children actually suck. The thing is, there's no shortage of people who have already listed their favorite Ninja Turtles on YouTube, and it comes from people with a lot more clout in the community than myself. It makes the idea of me ranking the Turtles seem kind of redundant, so I thought I'd put a different spin on it. I wanted to rank things based on how faithful they are to the source material. That is to say, if you had to show someone who had never heard of the Turtles before something that is definitively Turtles, which would you choose? Sure, quality does factor in, but more than anything else, this is a ranking of authenticity. To rein things in, I'm limiting this to movies and cartoons. As much as I love Konami's Turtle games, it's kinda hard to glean how much of a genius Donatello is in digital form. He looks pretty smart, I guess. So without further ado, here is my ranking of Turtles based on authenticity. Number 11. Christopher Films Ninja Turtles. Oh yes, we are doing a deep dive on this one. We Wish You a Turtle Christmas and Turtle Tunes was a pair of direct-to-video shorts that completely strip the soul out of the Ninja Turtles and strips you of your soul if you're unfortunate enough to watch them. It's basically Shang Tsung in turtle form. The Turtles are absolutely horrifying, and they spend most of their time singing songs and hanging out with children. Why are these kids not fazed by enormous anthropomorphic reptiles? How do they get back to the Turtles' lair? Isn't this abduction? None of the Turtles have a discernible personality, and in Turtle Christmas they brag about how they've finished their Christmas shopping, only to realize that they forgot to buy a present for Splinter. Who else are they shopping for? Casey Jones? Baxter Stockman? Seymour Guts? Apparently my jokes are only funny if I do them in lists of 3. I never saw these abominations as a kid, but if I had, I don't think I would have liked them even back then. Side note, I have a theory that Michelangelo is actually played by a New Zealander.
No problemo, dude. Just a little paper, some tape, pizza cake. Oh, pizza. Speaking of pizza!
Congratulations, Christopher Films Ninja Turtles specials, for being the absolute screaming shits. I don't wish you a Turtle Christmas. I really don't. Number 10. Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. In 1997, the Turtles were well past their prime, and though a partnership with Saban Entertainment of Power Rangers fame may look good on paper, in execution it felt hollow and forced. The Turtles are accurate to the framework of their personality tropes, but they're hyper-exaggerated and very goofy. It's campiness to the umpteenth degree, and none of them have any resonance to them whatsoever. Fight scenes are simply segments of cheesy one-liner after cheesy one-liner, and as a whole, it resembles the worst of what the live-action films would become. Also, the Foley artist must have been working overtime with the amount of arbitrary sound effects inserted into every single action. About the only interesting character is Venus de Milo, and I say this with full awareness that she is among the most maligned creations in Turtles history. Her foreign fish-out-of-water shtick isn't original or that well executed, but her toned-down personality makes her the closest you'll ever see in the show to a proper Leonardo. It does bug me that she was raised in China, yet trained as a shinobi. Why introduce this Chinese character only to make her an arbitrary variation of a Japanese martial artist? Granted, nobody in the show is doing anything vaguely ninja-like, so it's a moot point, but come on, man. Make her a master at Shaolin Wushu, just as a point of difference. At the end of the day, this is a display of the franchise at its lowest point. If this was someone's only impression of the Ninja Turtles, they would conclude that the Ninja Turtles are dumb and best left forgotten. Compared to the Christopher Films version, however, Next Mutation looks like an absolute pleasure. Number 9. Mutant Turtles Legend of the Super Mutant. I was tossing up whether to just file this one in the same category as the 80s cartoon because it has a lot of parallels. The character designs are the same, you've got Bebop and Rocksteady, it's effectively a spin-off, and it's only 2 episodes, but considering it's a Japanese OVA that's tonally unique, it occupies a different spot on this list. It's your standard anime fare, and as such, there's a lot of dialogue, excessively so. This gives the Turtles a lot of opportunities to stand out as unique, but surprisingly enough, they don't especially. Michelangelo is the only one who's noteworthy because he frequently has something silly to say or do. The others are just facsimiles of one another to the point where their ultimate technique is to fuse into one super form. In the second episode, Donatello has a little spiel that's suited to a character, but yeah, it's Turtles for the sake of Turtles, though it could just as easily be any other anime. At least it is totally worth it for this one scene where the foot soldiers are chilling on the beach, though. I love that. Number 8. Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The bane of Turtles fans around the world. Just take a look at any social media post that includes any reference to Rise, and the comments are filled with unfettered indignation. How to ruin TMNT 101. Hashtag, not my turtles.
It's the worst version of the TMNT ever. Come back to the 2003 version and bring them to 2020.
Why is not Shredder here? As soon as the artwork for the Turtles was unveiled, a lot of the community just wrote the show off without ever giving it a chance. Those who stuck around had their own issues, and I think the Nostalgic Critic said it perfectly in his early review. The Turtles all just kind of bleed into one another. They're all wacky and witty, and though the writing and the delivery is snappy, it just doesn't come across as very turtly. That being said, I think Rise of the TMNT is actually a lot of fun. I like the animation style, I like the stories they're telling, however they are the Ninja Turtles in name only. You could repackage the whole thing as a bunch of mutant meerkats, and it wouldn't really miss a beat. Splinter doesn't feel like Splinter, April doesn't feel like April, and I long for the days when Raph was Raph.
A little too Raph, you guys.
Michelangelo is a little bit wackier, I guess. Leonardo is very, very different, and I think that's the one that gets to me the most, because Leonardo is supposed to be this grounded stick in the mud, but here he's immature, and obviously that's the intention. They wanted for him to grow, but the way that Leonardo grows normally is he goes from self-doubting and kind of nebbish to becoming this strong leader. I don't see this whole transitional phase where Raphael is more level-headed as making sense to me. It's unfair to say that Rise isn't a good cartoon. It's just not a good Ninja Turtles cartoon, per se. Unlike the first 2 entries on this list, it's perfectly suitable for its target demographic, but it's just too far removed from the characters we knew and loved to be considered peak turtle goodness. Number 7. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1987. Sacrilege! Scandal! Bogus! Placing the most beloved iteration of the Turtles so low on this list feels absolutely wrong in a lot of ways. Without this cartoon, I may not have become a Ninja Turtles fanatic, and who knows if it would even still be around to this day. But remember, we're not trying to rank by affection or cultural impact, and quality only plays a partial role. We want to see the Turtles at their most turtly, and through necessity, that's not really what the 80s cartoon was. They had to tone down the Turtles' nuanced qualities and amplify their more marketable ones. Raphael wasn't an angry loner, he was a wisecracking smartass. Leonardo wasn't so much of an introspective warrior, he was more of a stoic hero. It was made for children, so they had to be fun. And oh, how much fun it was! Turtles is my most enduring lifetime obsession, and I still get a kick out of this show. It's actually pretty dated by today's standards. The animation of this era didn't age too well in a lot of ways, and the Turtles feel kind of slow and clunky at times. They get up to plenty of misadventures, and it's all harmless, really. They actually became a bit edgier in the last few seasons, which made for a more accurate depiction, but that's probably not what you think of when you cast your mind back to this series. Later editions would lampoon this version of the Turtles, ragging on the fact that they didn't use their weapons directly in combat. In the 2012 crossover, this was done in a way that made them seem lovable and different. And at least the original voice actors were brought back. Turtles Forever, on the other hand, goes out of its way constantly to paint them as obnoxious and immature, and that really rubbed me the wrong way. The moment they dropped their weapons and fled from the battle with Turtles Prime, oh god, that pissed me off! They would never do that! It's such a low blow. It was more like it was insulting us for still loving the 80s cartoon, at the exclusion of others, maybe. Anyway, that's another tangent for another day. Number 6. The 90s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie trilogy. If alarm bells weren't going off before, they probably are now. To rank the three 90s films together rather than separately may be a controversial decision, but they were made as a collective whole. People don't separate the Michael Bay films from one another, or the seasons of the animated shows, so these movies ought to be treated the same. Obviously, the reason most people wouldn't want to fit them together is because they take a precipitous drop in quality with each sequel. The original film was raw and visceral. It really balanced the gritty comic book origins with the Turtles' more playful aspects. Finally, Leonardo was portrayed as virtuous and self-doubting. Raphael had so much pent-up anger that clouded his judgment, and it left so much of an impression on me, I made a whole video about it. Give it a watch if you're interested. I'm gonna give you a few seconds to click that video. Don't disappoint me. Then, Secret of the Ooze happened. When I was a kid, this was my favorite of the trilogy. But looking back, it's clear to see the reasons why. The Turtles ramped up their catchphrases and one-liners, and most of the serious undertones were removed entirely, or at least scaled back, majorly. Funnily enough, Adam Carl's portrayal of Donatello was more accurate in my eyes, and the others aren't too bad for the most part. It's okay, and it got the gist of what the Turtles were supposed to be. Ninja rap aside. As for Ninja Turtles 3, yeah, that sure happened. Like I mentioned in the next mutation segment of this video, by now the Turtles were a bunch of goofballs with very little to differentiate themselves from one another. I remember when I watched this in the cinema, I must have been about 5 or 6 years old, and I grew so bored I actually got out of the aisle to practice doing ninja attacks. Like, this was a kid who lived and breathed Ninja Turtles, and even I couldn't sit still? That's a bad sign. And a bad movie.
Absolutely! Shwing!
So the sequels completely dragged the first film down in these authenticity rankings. I know, it's a shame, and if you're annoyed by the fact that they were lumped together, I'll break it down. The third movie sits ahead of the next mutation, and Secret of the Ooze probably rests somewhere between Rise of the TMNT and the 80s series. The original is around the realm of the top 4. It gets bumped down a couple of notches for Corey Feldman. And I love Corey Feldman's Donatello, but he just doesn't feel like Donatello to me. Maybe I'm alone in that. Number 5. Michael Bay's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Again, for this list you have to separate what's good from what's Turtles. Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles are cookie-cutter action films loaded with testosterone and plots so flimsy a strong sneeze would tear through them. As far as quality goes, they rank below Rise of the TMNT, easily. I don't like how the Turtles look here, but I love how they feel. They're all very distinct, and the way they tower over humans is actually kind of badass, and I think it's about one of the first times I really noticed it. They're more like roided up mutant tanks than ninjas, and that's okay. I haven't really mentioned supporting characters very much so far, but Stephen Amell's Casey Jones is pretty cool, and I love Will Arnett as Vernon Fenwick. He's just kind of being Will Arnett, but you know what? It works. These movies lose all kinds of credibility points for Megan Fox's April O'Neil, however. I detest that casting decision, especially when Emma Stone is sitting right there. She is April O'Neil, basically. Despite that, I really do feel as though these movies did the Turtles themselves justice. I wouldn't want to mess with this Raphael, he's menacing. While Donatello, both physically and verbally, feels more accessible. That's what I want from my Turtles. I want them to feel like different characters. They don't need to have zingers coming from every direction. Just give me diverse, rich personalities. Also, low-key, the elevator scene is hilarious, and I think it's very in character.
MC Mikey. MC
Number 4. TMNT 2007. One of the more overlooked pieces of the Ninja Turtles continuity. It didn't really resonate that much with people, but I think it did a pretty admirable job of representing the fearsome foursome. I won't elaborate on how too much, because the more the Turtles actually resemble their roots, the more I'll begin to sound like a broken record when I'm describing them. Here we get to see something akin to the premise of Ghostbusters 2. The band's been busted up, crime is on the rise, New York needs its heroes to assemble, maybe Bill Murray's there somewhere, you can never be sure with him. It means that we got to see what the Turtles might get up to if they weren't on active duty, and each of their paths here I feel is faithful and amusing. Leo's gone on a spiritual journey, Raph moonlights as a vigilante, Don works in IT, and Mikey becomes a children's party host. Having done 2 of these jobs before, I can tell you they are not as much fun as they seem to be portrayed here. And yes, I'm obviously referring to being a children's party host, and the brief time I was a vigilante. The movie itself is only okay. It has a few plot holes. April and Casey Jones just feel like they're tacked on. Plus, why is April suddenly capable of fighting the entire Foot Clan? That's weird. But if you're strictly talking Turtles content, you can hook it to my veins. We've been watching Leonardo and Raphael butt heads for years, so finally seeing them duke one another in a way that was really passionate and kind of scary, it feels like the best kind of fan service. As kids, we always fantasized who would win if the two duked it out, and here we have an answer! Well, they kind of both do. Everybody wins? They couldn't lean too hard one way or the other, could they? Speaking of Raph, Nolan North's interpretation is absolutely stellar, which makes me think that I should do a Raphael ranking at some point. Would you want to watch that? Would I? When I first saw this movie, it was with my girlfriend who had grown up with the Turtles as a kid, but she hadn't really followed their fortunes much after that, and she seemed to enjoy it. I think that's as good an indicator as any that it's worthy of the Turtles moniker. Number 3. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2012. In just a few short years since it ended, the 2012 version of TMNT has become a lot like Barack Obama. We all liked it when it was still in action, but now that we've seen what came after it, we love it even more in retrospect. That's a bizarre analogy. This series showed that you could successfully market a cartoon for kids without having to dumb it down too much. It had all the necessary story beats, Mikey could still carry the torch as the comic relief, and everyone got a chance to be themselves in a way that felt organic. Call me a Rob Paulson fanboy if you will, but his take on Donatello is my absolute favorite, and watching him interact with 80s Raph made my inner child go squee! Sean Astin's Raphael wasn't quite as volatile as he's been in other versions. I mean, he appeared downright mild compared to the last 2 we've covered, but it isn't disingenuous. He's kind of like Knuckles here. He's quick to anger, but ultimately misunderstood rather than unhinged. Unlike Leo, he don't chuckle.
He rather flexes muscle.
2012 actually mirrors Rise of the TMNT in a lot of ways with its frenetic pace and myriad of gags. But in this case, it doesn't do so at the cost of the turtles within it. I'll say it time and time again, with a license as beloved as TMNT, you have to do the characters justice. Leo's brave, Raph's tough, Donnie's smart, Mikey's fun, possibly on drugs. Just nail those aspects and you've got a formula for a good Ninja Turtles program. And that's what this was. It was a great Ninja Turtles program. And they built on that as the series went on. It grew, it challenged the status quo, it killed characters off at times. If we're talking just strictly quality here, this version of the Ninja Turtles could be the very best of them all. High praise, but I stand by that. Number 2, Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Call it recency bias, but I feel as if this 2019 feature gave me everything I could have wanted as a Turtles fan. Inserting them into Batman's world lets them experience the many quirks and villains of Gotham. I love a good crossover, and all of the Turtles really pop off the screen with vivid, rich personalities. In wrestling, there's a phrase called getting your shit in, which basically equates to making sure you fit as much of your trademark repertoire in as you can, and everyone really manages to do that here. Michelangelo has arguably never been funnier. Donatello's biting and sometimes passive-aggressive wit really suits him well while maintaining his passive demeanor for the most part. And this could be the coolest version of Shredder we've ever seen. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are comic book characters first and foremost, so when you're talking authenticity, you have to kind of look at how well they resemble that. In this iteration, that's what they feel like. It's grittier and it's more violent, but it doesn't try too hard to be edgy. You have Batman as your grounded, brooding point of difference, Mr. Sulky Pants, and he's juxtaposed against the more bombastic turtle personas. It works. It really just works. Maybe it's a little unfair to rank this one so highly for its accuracy to the source material, considering that its source material was a comic. But if you're talking legitimacy, you can't ignore it. In the same way that Next Mutation took the worst of the Turtles live-action films, the interpretation of the Turtles found in Batman vs. TMNT really takes the best of what came before it. If you're a fan, you should do yourself a favor and see how they are portrayed here. I really have no complaints. When I was preparing this video, I had myself damn well convinced that this should be number 1. After all, how could a film lifted directly from a comic book be topped for faithfulness? I have my reasons, and I think they're acceptable, even if they come across as questionable. But hey, can you guess who the top spot belongs to? Number 1, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles coming out of their shells. I know I'll cop a lot of flack for this. In the eyes of many, the Coming Out of Their Shells live tour was yet another cash-in when the Turtles marketing machine was at its apex. But if you actually take the time to sit down and watch it, you'll discover that there's a lot of subtle storytelling going on behind the scenes. You just have to know where to look. Alright, not funny. I'm still thankful for the awesome 16-bit version of Pizza Power that we got out of this live show, though. That's cool. Number 1, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003. This right here is the Mac Daddy, the golden standard, the revered Turtles cartoon to which all subsequent efforts will undoubtedly be measured. As the second animated series, it was important for 2003 to carve out its own path, unique from the 80s version that put the franchise on the map. And it did so in a way that was compelling and distinguished. When I think of the definitive portrayal of the Turtles and their supporting cast, this is how I imagine them. It's lighter in tone than Batman vs. TMNT, and that might make it feel less genuine to some people, but I couldn't justify ranking 84 minutes of animation higher than a series that lasted for 7 seasons. It told long, often complex stories. It let the characters flourish and grow over time. Michelangelo was his usual kooky self for the most part, but he had his moments of lucidity that enriched his personality. Leonardo was given time to be fleshed out, letting us see some of the more flawed aspects of his character. His obsessive tendencies, like when he refused help in battling the Rat King. Donatello was absolutely exceptional. He put a mirror up to anyone with a meek personality who still knew when to step up and be heard. He was super relatable, and same as it never was, maybe the strongest single episode in the franchise's history. And my dude Raphael, he was as New York as he'd ever been, and that's the most absolute praise you could give the character. Something about Raph was always different in the comics, as if he tried to associate more with Manhattan than he did with his family. He wants to fit in New York when he can't even fit in among his brothers. It's kind of a weird inner turmoil. And there has never been a more Raphael moment in cinematic history than this one scene here.
When I get out of here, I'm gonna...
This is some nice steel. How about telling me who gave them to you?
Yo mama.
When I was tinkering with this list, I knocked 2003 down a peg for how it jumped the shark in Season 6. Fast Forward felt like a short-term story arc that got extrapolated for an entire season, and Cody is just unbearably bad. He's worse than 50 freaking Venus de Milos. So yeah, the show went downhill, but the characters were pretty much the same. The tone was lighter, it was a lot less heavy, but I don't think it bled into the cast that much. It was more the issue of everything that was happening around them than the Turtles themselves. Besides, 2003 got a chance to redeem itself with a fitting swan song in Turtles Forever, as long as you disregard the disservice done to the 80s Turtles. Pick up your fucking weapons and fight! By now, these characters are well established and greatly adored. There's a reason why I've made 2 videos now where I spend so much time and effort trying to analyze this franchise. It's my first and only comic book love. Other people have their Superman, or their Spider-Man, or their arm fall off boy, or whatever the case may be. But to me, it has always been about the Ninja Turtles. It always will be. So, do you agree with these rankings? Would you prefer that the 80s or 2012 versions ranked higher? Should I have gone even deeper into the bag of tricks and included stuff like the summer shorts? I'm always up for some turtle discourse, and comments are appreciated. So thank you for watching, stay safe, stay hungry, and stay turtle. Nope, that didn't work as a closer either. God damn it.